questions. But I left one out. I was a liar. I was a liar to myself. I was a liar to my supervisors, my sisters, when it came to my drinking problem. I lied to a lot of people about that. And I tried to lie to God, but y'all know better than that. I ain't gonna lie to him, he knows. So I just wanted to clear the air with that as well. And I left off with, me arriving in Korea, but I just want to go back to, when I was in Cuba, I got back to the States in, I believe it was around the August time frame. And, we tried to work things out and it just didn't happen. And but when I was in Cuba and I got that phone call, instead of turning to God and praying, I turned to the bottle. And that's where my problem started, was down there, seeing all of the sadness that the refugees were going through, that we were helping them with. And then getting those phone calls, it was more than I could bear, and I should have turned to God in prayer. I should have got down on my knees, but I didn't. And I'll probably say this several times tonight. We've said it in here, surround yourself with Christian folk. If you're not with Christian folk talking about God and holding each other accountable, you're gonna turn to the dark side. And that's what I did, because, I'm not saying there's not Christians in the military, but most of it, it's a cussing, drinking kind of thing, unfortunately. And I went to the dark side. So, but yeah, when I got home, I took 30 days to leave or before I went over to Korea, I took 30 days to leave with my family, and I tried to get back in church. I was going to Tabernacle there in Newbern, and we went on to Korea, and God never gives up on us. When I got to Korea, and I got to my dorm room, which it's funny, they were called the crack houses because they were the worst dorms on post there. So that was where all the low-ranking of us stayed. But when I walked in my room and met my roommate, he was a Christian, he was saved. And so for the first several months, we'd go to the chapel, and I met the people at the chapel. And I would go to the club once in a while and have a drink or two, nothing major. But then there was an event. If y'all remember, one of my first deployment when I was in Saudi, we stayed in Khobar Towers. Well, in June 25th, was the Khobar Tower bombing. And I didn't lose any friends there, but I had some that were injured, because the two dorms that were hit was the security forces dorm and the civil engineer dorm. And my buddies from Seymour Johnson were there. And luckily none of them were severely injured, but I do know one of we call them wood butchers, the carpenters there. He was sitting on the couch, he was off that day, and our dorm rooms faced the outside perimeter gate there where the truck blew up. And he just happened to be sitting on the couch, and the combustion from that explosion blew in the sliding glass doors. Sliding glass doors are pretty thick. And I can tell you that even after a year later, slivers of that glass was still working its way out the back of his head. But when I heard that, not knowing anything, oh, Josh. Is that me?
Now we get the amen brother.
I like sound effects. Can y'all still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I apologize for that. But not knowing anything, and of course, it made all of us angry, and how this happened. But when I was there, it's like every week, every other day, sometimes we were having these we were going to increased threat cons where we had to put on our battle rattle and everything. And it cried wolf long enough, and it finally happened. And I'm thankful that I haven't cried wolf too many times with God, and He's led me back here. before something bad happened to me. I'm glad he didn't give up on me. I think it's me moving this thing, I'll try to stop. But, so, you know, we were there, but I literally went back to drinking, hardcore there in Korea. There wasn't a whole lot to do there. And I know several times, I told you last week about my mom. Well, I would be a little intoxicated when I called her, and of course she let me know that she knew what I was doing, and she could hear my voice, the way I was talking. And she let me know she wasn't proud, but unfortunately, even that wasn't enough to turn my ways. And I had a follow-on from Korea to Eglin Air Force Base, Florida. And I came home, I took 30 days of leave at home, went back to my church, tried to get right, tried to make things right, and I get down there, and what do? Get in my dorm room, I meet the people, they're standing, the other dorm residents, they're standing there drinking their beer, so what do? I jump right in with them, instead of, you know, going to the chapel or trying to find some Christian friends around there. I got tired of the partying and everything. I started to get tired of it. And so I started watching this, on Sunday mornings I'd get up and watch this TV evangelist. He was a local preacher, and I wish I could remember his name. I want to say it was Bobby Turner, but he was one of the pastors of the church there, and he really spoke to my heart. And I think the church was actually in Alabama, a little too far for me to drive on a Sunday morning, where it was at. But, you know, God started talking to me again. Well, then I had another deployment come up from there, just about a year after being there, and I deployed to Bosnia for Operation Joint Forge there. And it was in 1999 was when I went there. And it's a funny but not funny story. We lived in John, you may remember these, the old GP medium canvas tents with the old kerosene diesel tent heaters in them. And that's how we kept warm. I mean, everybody says, oh, Air Force stays in 5-star hotels, not engineers. Air Force engineers, we rough it up, we live out there in tents. Well, not only did we live in these canvas tents, but there was a boardwalk through a very small boardwalk, not much wider than this, that went from tent to tent. We had stairs that went up to it because our little tent city there was built on a UXO minefield. As we're walking, we could see the UXOs and the mines laying there. Supposedly they were de-armed by EOD, but that will get you thinking about your life, just because you never know when they could have missed one, and it might get angry. But there was one night in particular, it was cold there. Our main mission there was snow removal to get the C-130s in and resupply the Army. But there was one night, about 2 in the morning, I had gotten up to go hit the head, and I was wearing little 75-cent shower shoe flip-flops from the BX, you know, they're about this thick. Imagine the cheapest pair of flip-flops you could ever find. So I'm walking back, and I'm just kind of wrapped in a blanket in my flip-flops, and all of a sudden I hear something whizzing through the trees above me, and then it followed by trip flares and gunfire, that distinct sound of an AK-47. So as I go to take off running back to my tent, I don't know how quick it happened, but next thing I know, I'm laying on my back and I'm looking straight up in the sky where the boardwalk was frosted over, and you know, them little flip-flops. And that hurt. I ain't gonna lie, that hurt. And but I got back to my tent, got my gear on, we hit the mound. Luckily, the Army was on their game that night, and the towers took care of the threat for us. We got to go downtown. Well, not downtown for fun, but because we were the engineers and we had dump trucks, we would take the base trash to a landfill that was about 2 hours away. And so we'd have to suit up and load up the trash and get on down the road. And we did have security forces with us as well to help secure any threats that we might have on the way. And I've never seen, this was my first time really seeing a war-torn country. The landscape of the countryside was beautiful, green pastures, but it was littered with destroyed houses. I mean, people, it's almost like if you ever watch these World War II movies and you see the Band of Brothers, if you've seen that, you've seen these old Germans and people out there wrapped up, barely walking. I mean, that's what I saw. That's what it's like over there for them people. They're using any and everything to stay warm. Really, really sad. Luckily, you know, on the times we went, we never had to engage with anybody. Sorry. They were good.
It's the plug, I think it's the plug underneath the.
Yeah, they'll be okay.
Well, anyway, I'll leave it alone. So, you know, finally my tour was up. I get back to Eglin there on Christmas Eve night about 10:30. I landed back in the States here. And we always got a week downtime, R&R to recoup and rest, relax and everything. And it took me things that I had seen and did over there. There was a little more, but I'm not gonna get into those things. It actually put me back in the bottle again, or back in the beer can, I should say. And so for the next few months, you know, I was drinking hard and heavy, and then I had my door open one night. I was just sitting in my dorm room watching TV, had my door open, and I had two gals that lived across the hall from me. They were firemen. And I know one of them came in, we started talking, and she noticed my Bible was sitting on my desk. And she says, "Oh, you read the Bible? You go to church?" I said, "Well, no, I haven't had one, and I'm kind of backslid right now." She says, "Well, I'm going to church this Sunday. Why don't you come with me?" And I did. And well, I went several Sundays, you know, with her, kept going and kept going and kept going. And there was a great singles group there, about maybe 7 or 8 of us. And I started hanging out with them, and I finally joined the church down there. And I surrounded my people, I surrounded myself with Christian people. We got together on Friday nights, Saturday nights, and then Sunday after church. The times that I would get myself in trouble by going back to the alcohol. You know, we held each other accountable. We played games, sometimes we would even do Bible studies. It was awesome. I was finally happy again. I was living for God again. I was back in my environment per se. And so then, this was in, I think, February, TDY, temporary duty, came up to go to Turkey. Well, as a hunter, Turkey makes some really good over-under shotguns, really cheap. So that's why I volunteered to go over there to get me some over-under shotguns. Well, and I was supposed to be leaving in November, December timeframe. And so it came October and I never heard anything, so I went to my readiness office and they said, "Oh, nobody's contacted you?" I said, "No." They said, "Well, you're not going to Turkey anymore." I said, "Well, where am I going? Is it canceled?" They said, "Oh no, you're going to Kuwait." And this was in 2002. And as soon as I said that, I said, "Oh, okay, so in other words, I'm gonna be in Iraq here shortly." You know, because it was inevitable. If you were military back then, you got intel briefs and we knew what was going to happen. And so I got mad. And I was contemplating. I didn't live in the dorms at this time. I'd already moved out. And I was sitting there one night and I'm thinking about it, I was like, man, you're going into a war zone. You're going there to build up to go into a war zone. And you don't know how long you're gonna be gone, because my 4 months went to indefinite. So didn't know how long we were gonna be there. So unfortunately, I sided with the devil to go have fun until my time, because I didn't know if I was coming back. I wanted to live my life and have a good time, and unfortunately, that's what I did. And so the time came, we went to Kuwait, and I was augmented to another civil engineer group. I think they were out of New Mexico, and we built 3 aircraft parking aprons and 2 taxiways. I got there the 1st of December of 2002, and thank goodness there was no beer there. They had what we call near beer. It was alcohol-free beer, but you know, we would drink that. But thank goodness I wasn't getting intoxicated. And so we, you know, one night, I took care of my people. I was one of the ranking NCOs there, and I took care of my people. And it was the last night that we had before we had to be finished. And I sent all my troops home. I said, I'll take the rest of the shift tonight. Y'all go ahead. And I was sitting at a gate. It was like a cattle gate, but we call them camel gates. Desert, Saudi, you know. And it was dark. All I had was my flashlight and a bucket. I was sitting on that bucket, and I started looking up at the stars. And I started doing the one thing you should not do. You should never do. Hear me, young guys, young ladies? Don't ever make a promise to God that you know you're not going to keep. And I hope I put that verse in here, because I did have it, and I don't think it's on the list. I've been working on this. It's Ecclesiastes. Y'all want to write this down on your list. Ecclesiastes 5, 2 through 6. It is.
It is.
Okay.
Mhm.
Do not be rash with your mouth, and let not your heart utter anything hastily before God. For God is in heaven, and you on earth. Therefore, let your words be few, for a dream comes through much activity, and a fool's voice is known by his many words. When you make a vow to God, do not delay to pay it back, for he has no pleasure in fools. Pay what you have vowed. Better to not vow than to vow and not pay. Be careful how you make promises to God. Because I made promises to God that night that if he pulled me through this war, I would commit my life to living for him. To this day, I still haven't paid that back. But now, with this church family, I plan on paying everything back that I ever promised to God. And not that it's gonna, you know, make me any better of a person, but you know what, living for him is the right thing to do. I feel it in my heart that that's the right thing to do. And like I said, the reason I got saved when I was a little kid, I want to go to heaven, and I still want to go to heaven, so I'm gonna start living for him. And thanks to that little angel right there, which I got some stories coming up on that. I'm here tonight. And I jumped a story there, because I did have a story there before. When I was preparing myself to go over there, instead of getting on my knees and wanting to have a good time, Philippians 4, 6 through 7. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving let your requests be known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. In Proverbs 3:5, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. If I'd have just done them simple things, you know, I wouldn't have gone through all the hard times that I did. My hard times, I will admit right here, confess that my hard times, every single one of them were self-induced. And I take responsibility for them. And when I pray, I tell God, God, I'm ready to be judged for the things that I did. I said, I accept them, and they were wrong. I pray that you'll forgive me, but I'm also ready to be judged for them. So, you know, we finished up all of our projects there, and, so we were really, after that point, you know, we, other than running the airfield sweeper, keeping all the debris and garbage and tumbleweeds and everything off the flight line for the jets running the airfield sweeper, we really didn't have a job until the runway got hit. Additional equipment operators were needed, so I was loaned out because, again, it wasn't my squadron that was there. I was just kind of like the red-headed stepchild, so they just threw me around everywhere. So I went to be with the CE Readiness folks, and what Readiness does, their wartime mission was to run all the little chemical detectors. We had several different types, and we had little stands with M8 paper that would change different colors. I see John shaking his head, he knows about that. It's a little piece of paper, and I had little stands that we put them on, and when the bomb exploded nearby or whatever, and in the wind direction, we would go check these things. And if there was a chemical, it would turn different colors for different chemicals. But in order to do that, we had to be in full mop work. So once they called in the incoming, we already had our chem suits on. From the boots up, all we had to do was put our chemical gloves and our gas mask on. We lived like that for about 6-7 days in 115, 120 degree heat without getting out of it. And finally, after, like I said, it was about day 6, 7, maybe even 8, we got the all clear to get out of those suits. And basically I peeled everything off and it went in the trash. Uniform, boots and everything went right in the trash. And I'll tell you, that was, to be in the desert, that cold shower that we always got felt really good because we didn't have much hot water there. And yeah, I took about a 20-minute cold shower. That was really good. But then we found out, okay, y'all, let's get ready to pack up. We're closing down and we're forward moving to Iraq. We're going to Talil Air Base, Iraq. Talil Air Base, Iraq. And we're like, seriously? So we had to pack up everything in our base, from gym equipment to chow ball equipment, everything. We had to pack this stuff up, and then we started rolling convoys from Al Jaber Air Base, Kuwait, to Talil Air Base, Iraq, which was a 1-day drive to get there. And so we made it took several days, about a week, to get everything up there. And when we'd get there, we would automatically unload our tractor trailers first. We would park them in a certain area, a certain way. And we would set our cots up on the tractor trailers because the building still hadn't been cleaned out because the Marines had just went through there. And, yeah, you didn't want to stay in those places. So, and I say we slept on our trailers, but we really just laid there and watched the fireworks. And you know, it's funny when you feel your life's in danger, all of a sudden you get close with God again. And I laid there and prayed as I was watching these fireworks, praying that they would stay off in the distance and not come our way. And no one would come up around the perimeter, because I mean, literally there was just rolls of concertina wire as our perimeter, just to keep the locals out. I mean, it was a very, very, you know, desolate area out there.
Explain fireworks for the children, please.
By fireworks, I mean the bombs, the anti-aircraft going up in our aircraft, and our aircraft dropping bombs. Bombs is what I mean by fireworks. And first time I've been in a situation like that, but you know, hey, I wish I had my cell phone. I could have got some cool videos, you know, put on YouTube. But and we had, you know, on our convoys, we would have the Iraqis. You know, when we rolled them, it was a shock and awe. I mean, we literally devastated them right out the gate, and they immediately dropped their uniforms. And we had, you know, we would have vehicles, and they were wearing just civilian clothes, they weren't wearing any, armed guard or Iraqi guard, uniforms, and, they did have weapons, and they would run up and down our convoy, they'd speed up and slow down, they would mess with us. I had young airmen driving because I wanted to be behind the gun per se, if, they did mess with us because wasn't my first rodeo being in something like that, but, very nerve-wracking. And, so when I get back to the States, everything that went on over there, I hit the bottle again, or hit the beer cans again, unfortunately. And, that lasted for many, I guess several years. I can say many, many years, but several years. And, during that time, which was a blur for me, I didn't turn to God, and I made the same mistake I made the first time, not praying before I got married again. And, so young people, I said this last week, before you do anything, before you make any major life choices, pray to God, see what His will is for you. Don't do anything because you want to do it. Just read Proverbs 3:5 again. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. Lean on God's understanding. I wish I had it. Again, my life would have been so much simpler. So, got remarried again. I'm still down there in Florida, and the first 2 years, I guess, were probably okay. And then things changed, and I wasn't happy. And then I got forced to cross-train. The Air Force said, well, we got too many equipment operators, we're cutting back. So you got 3 options. You can get out, you can cross-train into this career field, or you can cross-train into this career field. So I'm like, seriously? You ain't got nothing better than this? And they said, nope, we're sorry. So I took the lesser evil of the 2 career fields for me at the time, which was called logistics plans, and our nickname was Loggies. Everybody in the Air Force has a nickname, their career field. We were Loggies. And basically what we did was we worked the secret squirrel side of all movements for passengers, cargoes, or cargo, for the various operations going on. I mean, and I'll tell you, there's operations going on that never make the news, never go. Out of sight, out of mind kind of thing, you never knew they happened. So I went 6 weeks to Lackland Air Force Base, and I was there and then came back, and I was trying to get overseas, trying to get out of Eglin, but I've been there, I think 6 years, 8 years. Well, they sent me right back. The other folks that had bought houses there wanted to stay. So I was like, hey, well, just swap with me. Oh no, I'm going to Azores, I'm not swapping now. And I was like, man. So I got stuck there. And so I went to my new shop and got my training and learned how to do the job. And then they said, okay, you've been at it 2 years. They're tech sergeant, it's time for you to deploy again. So I'm like, seriously? So I was slated for Balad Air Base, Iraq. And as I'm en route, I had to go through Kuwait, Ali Salim. And they said, well, guess what? I don't know if it's good or bad for you, but you're staying here. We need somebody from our unit down here to take care of our people, because the folks that were stationed there that were supposed to be taking care of our people weren't doing their job. And so I was like, all right. So I got my turnover, there I was. And we had this funny story. Had this captain, she was about yay tall, about like my other sister. Her name is Captain Kirk. She got made fun of. She got made fun of. And, she was kinda like me, when things didn't go the way they should, she got a little angry. And, you know, by this time, I'm a tech sergeant now, E6 in the Air Force, and, I learned a little bit of compromise and understanding. And she came in raising Cain one day, and I said, "What's wrong, Captain?" "There's people at Trans, they won't give me a bus, they said they don't have a driver." I said, "For real?" I said, "All right, well, let's go. Let's go over there." She's like, "What are you gonna do?" I said, "Don't worry about it, let's just get in the truck and let's ride over there." So we did. We walked in there, and the guy kind of rolled his eyes because he seen it was her again. We walked up to the counter, and I whipped out my wallet, grabbed my driver's license, my government driver's license, put it on the counter, so I need to sign out a bus. I had all buses on my driver's license, because, I mean, in CE you had pretty much everything on your license, and it said all of everything where you wouldn't fit it on there. And she says, "Well, aren't you just full of surprises?" I said, "I don't ever give out my talents, Captain." I said, "But from now on, when we gotta get our people," we had to shuttle our people to Camp Gearing, before they went down range. They had to go down there for special weapons training and things like that. And, of course, it's also kind of funny that on there, because this was Camp Gearing was for Army, Navy, and Air Force. You know how, if you're familiar with our military bases, they'll have so many days since last year. Their sign says so many days till last incidental fire. Because they, at the clear and barrel, a lot of the folks wouldn't clear their weapons right, so I just thought that was funny. And I was actually leaving the base one day, leaving that post with my folks to get them back, to get them down range. And while we were coming through the gate, one of the Army soldiers did a misfire into the gun barrel, the clear barrel. And it scared us. I mean, we were like, I like hit the brakes, and we're like looking for contact and everything, so yeah, that was pretty funny. But I was there for 6 months. Luckily, I didn't see any action when I was there, but I'm gonna tell you, I think I'd have rather seen action than do one of the jobs that I had to do there, because we coordinated airflow and movements. I had to schedule and work, take care of escorts with the bodies that they were escorting that come from downrange. We would get the bodies to unfortunately it was a freezer, we had to put them in a freezer. And then I would take the escort and get him to his room, bed him down. And I had to coordinate his flight separate. He couldn't fly on the plane with the bodies. The air crews would take care of the bodies, get them in a casket, place the flag over them, and that C-17 would take off. And then when I got the flight and everything for the escort, I would go pick them up. And that was a delicate situation, you know. You had to be very delicate, because these fellas just either watched their buddy die, or it was their buddy, whether they saw it or not. It was their buddy, so it was a delicate situation, and that was, to me, one of the hardest things that I had to do. Like I said, I'd rather seen combat than have to do that. So anyway, I finally make it back here, and we're back to Florida. And I got orders to go to Tinker Air Force Base, Oklahoma. In Oklahoma City. And I said, you know, every assignment's what you make it. I go with a positive attitude, I'm gonna do good. And so I get there, and as always, we were part of the logistics readiness squadron in my career field, but I was never assigned to a logistics readiness squadron. I was always embedded in another squadron, which I think I like that a lot better anyway, because I got all the cool deployments and TDYs and things like that. I'll share some a little later. So I get there and learn the job, and the second rank, I had a master sergeant above me there. He trained me good, and I learned how they do business there and everything. Because we were I was embedded in the AWACS. If y'all are not familiar with AWACS, it's that big surveillance plane that's got the big dome on top that spins around. And there's only 3 places, maybe 4 places in the world these planes exist, but Oklahoma City is the headquarters for all that. And we have we have a few planes in Alaska, and they'll bring them from Alaska down and swap planes out with us. And then I wanna say there's some in Japan, and I wanna say there's a couple in Europe. Destination undisclosed. But, cause these folks, I tell you what, I don't envy them. To be air crew, sometimes these guys are up in the air for 12, 14 hours doing their job up there. If you ever watched the Transformer movie, there's one of the AWACS in the movies, and these planes, they got their desk in there, they're working everything. So anyway, enough on that. So I was only there, I got there in 2009, 2008 I got there. 2010, I got tagged to go to Iraq. To Baghdad International, where the Green Zone is, and there's a bunch of small FOBs. You probably heard or remember some of them, Camp Victory, Camp Striker, just many, many camps there. So as I get closer, 2 weeks before I'm supposed to leave to go to Fort Dix and do my training and then head downrange, I get a phone call. My dad's got to have his pacemaker removed, and when they take it out, he's going to have probably 24 hours or less to live. Well, they're doing this surgery on the Friday before I'm supposed to leave on Sunday to tackle this deployment. And that Thursday afternoon, I was on the way home from work the day before, my dad called me. He said, son, I don't know if I ever told you. If I have, I'm gonna tell you again. I want you to know how proud of me I am. He says, but promise me when I'm gone, you're gonna do these few things for me. And I gotta flip over and read it. He said, but I wish and I will pray till I'm gone that you'll get back in church, you'll pray, you'll tithe, and do God's will. And that was his last words to me, other than I love you. He passed away Saturday morning early. And I'd already coordinated with the school up in Fort Dix that I was supposed to go to. I already told them. Unfortunately, they only gave me 1 week. So I flew out, I think I got back home here. I flew into New Bern. I don't know if it was Sunday or Monday. Everything was happening so fast, it was a blur. But my dad, he did 22 years in the Army National Guard, and so he had a military funeral, so I had my blues with me. Unfortunately, my travel changed because I couldn't leave with my weapon and come home, so I had to leave my weapon at Tinker Barge in the schoolhouse, and then when I was done, fly back to going over with the people I trained with. But that 1 week, I think me and my sisters, we came a lot closer, losing Dad, and we were all really close with our dad. I just lost my hunting and fishing buddy, and young people don't ever take a day for granted with your parents. Enjoy every minute. So I literally had 1 week to man, my words are going from me. I had 1 week to grieve. And Friday, I took off and landed up in Fort Dix. We went through our 30 days of combat training, combat skills training. We learned how to drive vehicles because I was going to be driving in Iraq and everything. downtown. And, so we had, you know, they taught us all these skills. If we're in a car, how the car in front of us is disabled. I mean, basically we got to do all the fun stuff, crash up derby almost, you know, it was fun. And I mean, we had scenarios where, and this really put a lot of things in perspective for me of how serious this deployment was gonna be for me. We did a scenario where we were driving, and it was the instructor driving, and we were just going along talking, and then he would just slump over like he had been shot, and we had to take control of the vehicle. And that one scenario right there is what really made me realize, okay, this is some serious stuff we're getting into. And, you know, they had us down to a science. We took control of the vehicle. You know, we all went through each position. So I get over there and, meet my people, got my turnover, and, I lived on Sather Air Base, which is right there on the runway, just across the airfield from Baghdad International. And we worked on Camp Stryker, so I had to go out to the green zone and drive around into our little building. And, I was one of two enlisted, and the rest were officers in this little building. So my little shop there, I had a captain and 3 lieutenant colonels, and a master sergeant that I worked for, and I'm still a tech sergeant at this time. And then we worked for a 1-star general. So things were going smooth over there. Luckily, there was there was a few attacks, but not where we were. We were pretty safe where we are. But we had these, everything was going so smooth over there, I decided to take a biology class just to kill time, you know. And I took it through the University of Maryland. It's not the one in Maryland, but it's some kind of university. I can't remember the name of it now. It's an international thing. UMUC is what they called it. So my counterpart there, she picked me up from my class, because we had one truck we had to share, because we were responsible for moving people around the different pops and everything. And we were gonna take it easy that night. We were going to one of the R&R hooches, just to relax, have a smoothie and everything. So I'm driving at this time, and she always let me drive when I was there. And we're heading around Perimeter Road. And if you ever seen a CRAM, I don't know if anybody knows what a CRAM is, but it's a counter artillery mortar defense system. And we call it R2-D2 because that's what it looks like. It literally looks like R2-D2 with a big gun coming out of it. And it basically scans. It picks up any mortars, rockets, drones. It'll shoot anything out the sky. It's a defense system. So we're driving around Perimeter Road, and literally that thing, it scared me because it literally looked like it was going across the hood of our truck. It was probably as close as from here to the sound booth back there. And shocked at first, I was like, uh-oh. And I had my window down. I grabbed the wheel, put my finger in my ear like this, and said, hold on, we're getting ready to have some fun. And she's like, huh? And the CRAMs just were going off all over, taking out these mortars and RPGs that were coming in. I had parked the truck, we got out and hit the ditch line. I parked. Thank God I was driving. He blessed me that night, because, and please, ladies, don't beat me later. But, you know, she wasn't one that was really meant for combat. She was like, I'm getting our vest and stuff out of the back of the truck. I just jumped, sling it. She's like, get under the truck. I said, no, we're going to this ditch line over here. You never get under a truck when there's income. But there's a ditch line there that it was there, and there was a palm tree there, so we hunkered down behind that, and of course, she's raising Cain. Every word was a cuss word a second. And I'm just sitting there, cool, watching there, all these CRAMs blow up all these RPGs coming down on us. And later on, I'm like, God, you are looking out for me, and I am just doing you this way. I'm not going to church. I'm not telling people about you. Yeah, I still pray at the chow hall, and that might be an example of people, but you know, to others. But I'm not living and talking like you would have me do, God. But yet, you never give up on me. You never give up on me. And sorry, this is the guilt and the remorse. of me acting this way. And I was supposed to read a verse before I told that story. And that's 2 Samuel 22, 3-4, or 3-4. The God of my strength in whom I will trust, my shield, and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold and my refuge. My Savior, you save me from violence. I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. Shall be saved from my enemies. That verse was all me when I was over there. God saved me. And I didn't know why. And I can honestly say now I still don't know why. And Pastor, I'm sorry I went way over it. I've been up here talking and talking. It's 7:30, y'all. So I'll make this quick and I'll end it here. Saw some action over there. And that verse right there, I hold dear to my heart, because I wouldn't be here tonight if it wasn't for God saving me and her that night. I had nothing to do with it. It was all Him, and I give Him all the praise and glory for being up here tonight. And Pastor, I didn't finish. I've got more war stories and more broken promises to God and more how I came back to God. If you need me, if you would like me to do it next week, I will. I would love to finish.
Look for another Wednesday night.
Yes.
You was fishing stories.
I can tell you some fishing stories. But, again, I thank y'all for being here. It means a lot. And I hope that some of you younger folk have learned where I went wrong, so you don't make those same mistakes.
They were talking about it last week. They're listening. They're listening. The Lord's
That
using
makes me
it.
feel good, because that's the one reason I decided to give my testimony is I want to be a mentor to these young kids, not just being up here, but I've got some things planned that I'm gonna be talking about at the round table and the men's breakfast this Saturday, and I've got some things in store, and I'll be in about that later. Pastor, I'm gonna turn it over to you, because I like to talk, and